Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk about the teachings of Zarathustra and the Western philosophy. Last time, in my last video, I talked about the legacy of Zarathustra. So this time, I'm going to map the teachings of Zarathustra to the Western philosophy. Like, I'm going to say these tenets of Zoroastrianism maps out to this school of philosophy in the West. So I'm going to do that mapping and see if there's accurate mapping between the two. Now, when I say the mapping, I mean if certain aspect of Zarathustra's teachings resonates with certain philosophy, does this part of teaching parallels to this particular school of philosophy? So that's what I mean when I say mapping, to see what resonates with which philosophy, or which one parallels to what. So that's what I'll try to do that and demonstrate it in a diagram that I have prepared. So let me share with you this diagram that I have prepared. Hopefully, it would help to discuss in detail. Okay. What I'm displaying in here, in this screen, this on the right, I'm showing you the teachings of Zarathustra. On the left, at the top, I'm showing the Greek mythology, specifically Prometheus. So this is the Promethean worldview, and this is the Zoroastrian worldview on the right. The common denominator between the Greek Prometheus and Zarathustra is fire. This is the bridge. This is what both of them have in common. And fire represents knowledge. It represents wisdom. So fire, from the Zoroastrian perspective, it represents truth, honesty. So that's why they have fire temples. And so this is the common denominator, or this is the common ground between the Greeks and the Persians. Then we have on the right side. Now, I'm trying to map different school of philosophy with the teachings of Zarathustra. So, what are the teachings of Zarathustra? One is the duality. So, what that says, or what that means, is that there is a cosmic struggle. There's a cosmic battle between the good and evil. And that's represented by Ahura Mazda, the good, and Angra Mainyu, the bad, the evil. So this battle, this is a cosmic battle. And so each individual needs to take side. Whose side are you with? Are you with the good, or are you with the evil? And what that tells you that Zoroastrian teachings are individualistic. They are based on individual. Every individual makes that decision, whose side to be. So it's not a collectivist religion, as opposed to, let's say, Christianity. In Bible, you see so many references to herd, to flock, to shepherd, so that means that there is a tendency in Bible that it's a collectivist paradigm. Christianity is a collectivist religion, that could be said. That's why there's so many, very many references to shepherd, herd, flock. You don't find any of those in Avesta. Avesta sees individual, not the collection of people. So every individual have to make that decision, whether you would be on the good side or on the evil side. This is the cosmic battle that have existed ever since. So that's the duality, and that maps out to individualism, to free will. You see on the left bottom, and it's the individual choice and individual responsibility. So you hold the individual to be responsible for their behavior, for their action, for their decision. Obviously, there would be consequences. It's very consequential. Now, here I'm showing Friedrich Nietzsche. He actually discusses individualism. He talks about Übermensch, an individual who becomes Übermensch, a superhuman. In fact, there's a similar concept in Zoroastrianism, that you become Ashavan. An individual becomes Ashavan. Ashavan is almost equal to Übermensch. I mean, it's not like 100%, but they have a lot in common. Both Übermensch and Ashavan, they have a lot in common. But it's an individual responsibility. That's the key element. It's not a collectivist responsibility. So you see how that maps easily to individualism that we have in the West, or Western philosophy. And then there are other concepts. Let me go over each one and show you in this diagram. Then here, I'm showing you the utilitarianism, social justice. There is so much emphasis in Avesta on social justice. And we have John Stuart Mill, that he pioneered. Before him, actually, we had this the concept of social justice, or this worldview, or this movement. But he popularized it. John Stuart Mill popularized social justice. And so that is another tenet of Zoroastrianism, or Zarathustra's teaching. And another one is existentialism. That's another component of the Zarathustra's teachings, that there's so much emphasis on pursuit of personal truth and individual search for meaning and authenticity. The individual goal, individual is goal-oriented. Zoroastrianism is very much goal-oriented, is utopian. So each individual has a responsibility for self-perfection, for pursuing personal truth, and the individual's search for meaning, for purpose in life, and for authenticity. So the individual shapes his or her going forward destiny. So you shape your own destiny. You are in charge. The individual is in charge. You're goal-oriented, and you believe in self-perfection, and it's the individual's job to give meaning to his or her own life. You give that meaning. You provide that purpose. So it's a very purposeful life, very meaningful life, and the individual is in charge of all of that. So, and that's what the existentialist, someone like Jean-Paul Sartre, you know, he pioneered this movement, this worldview of existentialism. But Zarathustra actually started that, or he initiated that. He promoted, actually, existentialism. Although it's very ancient, Zarathustra's teachings, but it resonates with the modern thinking. It parallels the modern thinking of existentialism, someone like philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. And this is 20th century. So one wonders, how could Zarathustra's teaching, so ancient, but would resonate with such a modern thinking, with such a modern philosophy. So you see the parallels. You see how each tenet of Zarathustra's teaching maps out to the modern philosophy, to the modern Western philosophy. So we have individualism, we have existentialism, and as I mentioned, we have the social justice or utilitarianism, which was popularized by John Stuart Mill. And we have a strong emphasis on environment or environmentalism. Zarathustra's teachings promote or emphasizes the respect for nature and respect for environment. The teaching almost repeatedly, there are so many references that there should be focus. There should be focus on environment, and there should be focus, respect to nature, respecting the nature. Almost all of the Zoroastrian festivities, like the New Year, or what they call the Nowruz, it revolves around nature. And that's the key component of Zarathustra's worldview, respect for nature. So you see how it maps out to this modern thinking of environmentalist movement that exists today. So you see there are one-on-one mapping. Each one of these tenets of Zarathustra's teaching, how they map in today's worldview, in today's philosophy, in the West. And let me go over. I explained the duality, the cosmic struggle between the good and evil. And another one is the free will. This is also part of the Zarathustra's teaching. And every individual, they have the freedom to choose between the good and evil. That's where the free will comes. And it's their choice. Every choice, the choices that every individual makes, shapes the world around that individual. So you see how individualism and existentialism so far has existed, or it is embedded in Zarathustra's teachings. And individual responsibility, each person is responsible for their own actions and the consequence of each action. So every decision we make is consequential. So again, you see how individualism and existentialism is resonated in this teaching. Then we have a moral code. Then we have immortality of the soul. This is existentialism. This tells you that immortality of the soul and the eventual resurrection of the dead. That means all of our behavior, all of our decisions that we made, all the choices that we have made, there is a consequence. It is so important to think of these teachings as consequential. And that's what existentialism, they promote. And that's why they say pursuit of personal truth. Individuals search for meaning and authenticity, for purpose. So all of these are part of Zarathustra's teachings, which resonates with today's Western philosophy, such as individualism, such as existentialism, such as utilitarianism, and such as environmentalism. And as I mentioned, how important is nature? Zarathustra saw the natural world as a manifestation of Ahura Mazda, and he urged his followers to respect and care for nature, to respect and care for environment. So you see how that resonates with the environmentalist view or their perspective. And this one, virtue ethics. Virtue ethics, which is Zoroastrian belief in good thoughts, good deeds, and good words. Good words, good thoughts, and good deeds. So these three, which is part of the virtue ethics, and this is repeated so often, so many times. It's in Avesta, and it is on some other literature, Zoroastrian literature as well. So you see how virtue ethics is being focused and emphasized so repeatedly, so many times. And the futuristic aspect of Zarathustra's teachings. That's why Zarathustra's worldview is futuristic, because the goal is, it is very goal-oriented. It's very purposeful. It is always looking forward, going forward. Just like Prometheus. The Promethean worldview is also very futuristic. In fact, the word Prometheus means forethought, to foresee the future. And it's same as Zoroastrian worldview. It is very futuristic because eventually, this is what Zarathustra's teachings emphasize, that every individual is goal-oriented and their responsibility is eventually to become Ashavan. And Ashavan is the same concept or similar concept as what Nietzsche coined the word Übermensch, superhuman. So Zarathustra is promoting every individual to become a superhuman or Ashavan. It's an Avestan word. And Nietzsche promotes to become Übermensch or superhuman. And so you see how these two concepts, they parallel each other, Ashavan and Übermensch. And how these two concepts, they have so much in common. So that's the goal. That's why I said it's futuristic, it's utopian, and it's goal-oriented. You have a goal, and you just follow that goal. Try to, it's a self-actualization, self-perfection. That's the goal. And so I was trying to show how Zarathustra's teachings, they map out to today's thinking, today's Western philosophy, different branches of Western philosophy. And so that was part of the, in fact, let me also mention this. Nietzsche says, he says that there was a historical opportunity. There was a historical opportunity. And he wishes, he deplores that why this didn't happen. He wishes that instead of the Roman Empire conquered Greece, instead of this, he wished that the Persians, the Persian Empire, would conquer Greece before the Romans did that. So he wished that the Persians would have done it, because then Persians, the Persian culture or the Zoroastrian worldview would have provided the conduit to the Greek philosophy to grow, to develop even further. And he believed if instead of Romans, the Persians would have colonized the Greeks, the Western civilization would have been far more ahead. We would have been in a much better place than we are now, in terms of progress, in terms of technological development, in terms of scientific discoveries, in terms of all the inventions that we have had, the engineering. So he believes, and he wishes that this was a missed opportunity. This was a missed opportunity, and he wishes that Persians should have gone ahead before the Romans did that, would have colonized the Greece, and that would have helped, that would have speeded up the development of philosophy, science, mathematics, engineering, technology, human development. So that's what he's suggesting. That's what he wishes that, that it should have happened. That's the direction the history would have gone. So we ended up going in the wrong direction, because the Romans went ahead and they colonized Greece. Unfortunately, he thinks that was an unfortunate event that took place. So yeah, so that was the missed opportunity. Let me now show you another diagram. Here, let me show you a different one. And here I'm going to explain more of the Okay, what happened to the, okay. This diagram that I'm sharing with you, okay, last time in my last video on the legacy of Zarathustra, I mentioned where the philosophy started or was born, Miletos, on the southwest corner of today's Turkey. And it happened after Cyrus the Great went to Lydia, and that was the conquest of Lydian Empire. And in the battle with Croesus, he was the king. He was the richest king of his time. And so Cyrus conquered Lydia, and that was the first time the Zoroastrian thinkers and the Lydian thinkers, they would meet face to face. That was the first historical interaction between the Persian thinkers and the Greek thinkers. And that was an opportunity for fusion of two distinct thoughts, fusion between the Greek thinking and the Persian thinking. And those two fused together. And it gave birth to philosophy. Philosophy was a totally new thinking. Before then, there was no philosophy in Greece. So it was a Homerian thinking. The Homerian thinking and the Greek philosophy it's a paradigm shift. These are two totally different way of thinking, way of worldview. So there was a major paradigm shift when philosophy was born. So the first philosopher is considered Thales. Thales of Miletos. And so let me show you, let me talk to you about Plato, because Socrates, so we have a pre-Socratic philosophers. They were mostly Greek philosophy, which was developed in Miletos or Lydia, which was the Persian domain. That was part of Persian colony. And then when the philosophy was transferred, philosophy migrated into Athens. Then in Athens, we have Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. These are the three main founding father of Western philosophy. Now, Plato was a member of Pythagorean Academy. He was when he was young, in South Italy, he was a member of Pythagorean Academy. So he studied Pythagorean philosophy. And Plato was also very much influenced by Heraclitus of Ephesus. So the Pythagoras of Samos and Heraclitus of Ephesus, both of them lived in these small islands right next to Lydia or next to Miletus. So there are many very small islands over here that these two philosophers lived there, they grew up there, and they developed their philosophy in there. And they were very much influenced by the Zoroastrian worldview, Zoroastrian thinking. And Pythagoras, as I said last time, he spent about a dozen years, maybe 12 years in Babylon, and he held a lot of discussions with the thinkers, Zoroastrian thinkers. So Heraclitus very much aligned with the Zoroastrian thinking, very much in line with the Zoroastrian thoughts. And Plato was very much influenced by these two philosophers, by these two Persian philosophers, because they were from Persian territories. And so Plato has also, he had a student, and his name was Eudoxus of Cnidus. Eudoxus was also from this part, the Persian colony in Lydia. So he was very much aware. He knew about Zoroastrian teachings. He was aware of the Zarathustra's original teachings. And so his relationship with Plato was his teacher, was that he was teaching Plato about Zoroastrian teachings, and Plato was teaching Eudoxus philosophy, Greek philosophy. So that was a kind of relationship that these two had. I mean, they were both a teacher and at the same time a student. Plato was a student of Zarathustra's teachings, and he was learning that from Eudoxus. And Eudoxus was the student of philosophy and learning philosophy from Plato. So they were teaching at the same time, learning from each other. And so the point that I'm bringing this up is that to show you how much exposure Plato had about the Zoroastrian teachings, about the Zoroastrian thinking, how much exposure he had, how much he knew about it, about the Zarathustra's teachings. There's one more that I need to mention. Clodius is accusing Plato of plagiarizing parts of Zarathustra's teaching. Clodius is saying, this is a major accusation. Clodius is saying that Plato plagiarized some parts of Zarathustra's teachings. And especially he names, he plagiarized the teachings about nature, such as myth of air. That's the part that he's accusing Plato that plagiarized. And he got that from Zarathustra, that part. So, like I said, that's a major accusation that Clodos, he's Greek. He's from Lampsacus, and he was the student of Epicurus, but this is his claim. He accuses Plato that he plagiarized Zarathustra. And so that shows the extent of exposure that Plato must have from, or the influence that he had from Zarathustra or Zoroastrian teachings. And so all of this to show you that Zarathustra's legacy was deep, and his teachings was able to resonate with so many Western thinkers, Western philosophers, with so many Greek philosophers, and that's why. So when we want to study the foundation of Western philosophy, we need to go further. We need to go further than the Greeks. We also need to consider the contribution of Zarathustra. We need to consider the contribution of Persian worldview or the Iranian worldview as well. So we need to study, when we study the foundation of Western philosophy, we need to study the both sides, the Greek perspective as well as the Iranian perspective, because they have contributed so much in Western philosophy that we cannot just focus on the Greek thinking. We need to include the Persian worldview as well as the Greek worldview together, and this would balance it out. This would provide a balanced view of Western philosophy. That's all we're trying to do by considering the Persian contribution or the Iranian contribution in Western philosophy. And we see how the Greek thinking complements the Persian contribution. The Persian thinking, the Persian worldview, as well as the Greek philosophy, they complement each other. And this would provide a balanced foundation for the Western philosophy. And we need to have that balance. The American education system needs to teach, needs to include and make that part of the school curriculum in academia, in high school, when they teach history, when they teach philosophy. They need to provide that balance. They need to provide both perspectives, the Persian perspective as well as the Greek perspective together. And that will bring a balance. So when we study the Western philosophy, it would make more sense. It would be much easier to understand when we consider both sides. So that's what I wanted to share with everyone today, how is to, okay, let me give you an example. Cyrus the Great in Isaiah 45:1. It labels, Isaiah 45:1 labels Cyrus the Great as Moshiach or Messiah, and which means the anointed one, the anointed one, and 20 times we see Cyrus the Great is being referenced in Bible. So that's how Bible treats Cyrus the Great. Now we have Xenophon that he wrote Cyropedia. He wrote in Cyropedia, he depicts Cyrus the Great as both the liberator and as a conqueror. Now, Plato read the Cyropedia of Xenophon, and Plato, in his book, The Republic, he coined the phrase philosopher king. Where did he get philosopher king? He got the philosopher king from Cyropedia, which was written by Xenophon. And so now we see the connections. Plato came up with this concept called philosopher king, a philosopher who became king later, or a king who became philosopher later. So it's a combination of two concepts, king as well as philosopher. But what prompted Plato to come up with this idea is the book Cyropedia. So now we got philosopher king, and in Bible we have Moshiach or Messiah, anointed one, and Cyropedia, which depicts Cyrus the Great as a liberator. So you see how the Bible, Isaiah, book of Isaiah, and book of Cyropedia by Xenophon, and the Republic, which repeatedly uses philosopher king so many times, Plato in this book. You see how the relationship between these different books. We got 3 books in here: Bible, Cyropedia, the Republic. And you see how these concepts, there's a relationship between these concepts. Moshiach, or Messiah, anointed one, and philosopher king, and Cyropedia by Xenophon. So these are just some of the foundational, or some of the basic concepts that you see how these concepts have migrated from Zarathustra's teachings into the Republic, which is a book of political philosophy by Plato. And also that concept has been reflected in Bible as well, book of Isaiah. So if we trace these thoughts, these concepts, you see, by tracing, we can see the footprint of these ideas, how the source. We can go to the source. We see where did it come from, where did it originated from. So all of this comes from the original teachings of Zarathustra. So, as I indicated, the Zarathustra's teachings in today's modern world, we have individualism, existentialism, utilitarianism, environmentalism, and futurism. So it's always, you look forward, that's the, in fact, Zarathustra was the first one who discovered future, because until then, the thinking was time is cyclical. We go through these cycles. This is how the Indians were thinking. This is how the Greeks were thinking. This is how the Egyptians were thinking. And this is how the Chinese were thinking. Okay? So Zarathustra was the first one. He pioneered. He said, time is not cyclical. It is linear. So there is a future. And we plan for future. We plan for future. And that's what the word Prometheus means. So for thinking, for thought, you plan for the future. And so I wanted to show these connections and explain how, where these concepts have been originated from. Next time, I will have a video and I would discuss this further, that the Western liberal democracy is based on social contract theory. The social contract theory, which was initially developed by Thomas Hobbes, then John Locke, and I want to say that democracy, which is based on this theory, and then if we still had Zoroastrianism in Iran, in Persia, and if Islam would not have destroyed Zoroastrianism, we would have had another form of democracy based on Zarathustra's teaching. Because, as I showed you, Zarathustra's teachings maps out with individualism, with existentialism, with environmentalism. These are all the ingredients of Western democracy. So if we had Zoroastrianism in Iran, if the conquest of Persia by the Bedouin Muslim Arabs would not have happened, and we still had the Zoroastrian Persia, we would have had democracy originated from Iran, based on Zarathustra's teachings, because Zarathustra's teachings is based on individualism, is based on existentialism, is based on environmentalism, and is based on utilitarianism. His teachings, Zarathustra's teaching, resonates with all of these. It resonates, it parallels these concepts, these modern thinking, modern philosophy. So although Zoroastrianism is very old, 26, 27, 28, 100 years old, but it strongly resonates with today's thinking, with today's democracy. You see, so I'm gonna compare these two democracy. The existing Western liberal democracy, which is based on social contract theory, and the democracy which gets produced from Zarathustra's teachings because of the component, or because of the elements, because of the tenets of his teachings, which produces individualism, existentialism, and utilitarianism, which produces social justice. So, and combination of all of this produces democracy. But the difference, I'm going to talk about this more in my future video, my next video, but I would elaborate that what are the differences between these two democracies. So I will be talking to you next time, and until then,